Imagine you are walking toward the largest city on Earth. The year is 570 BC. You have been traveling for weeks across the flat, featureless plains of Mesopotamia, a landscape so empty that the sky feels heavier than the ground. And then, from the shimmer of heat on the horizon, something begins to rise. Walls, impossibly tall walls, stretching across the entire width of the plain like the edge of the world. As you get closer, the scale becomes obscene. The outer wall is wide enough for two chariots to race side by side along its top. Behind it, a second wall. Behind that, a moat. And behind all of it, a city of perhaps 500,000 people, the largest, wealthiest, most terrifying concentration of human power that the ancient world has ever produced. This is Babylon. Not the myth, not the metaphor, not the cautionary tale that later civilizations will turn it into. This is the real, functioning, living city. At the absolute peak of its power, under the king who made it everything it is. You are approaching from the north, along the processional way. And ahead of you, growing larger with every step, is the Ishtar Gate. A monumental double archway covered in bright blue glazed bricks and decorated with rows of golden animals that seem to move in the desert light. Lions, bulls, dragons. No one in the ancient world has ever seen anything like this. Most of them never will. What you are about to see is an AI reconstruction of this city, built from archaeological excavations, cuneiform tablets, and the accounts of ancient travelers who saw Babylon with their own eyes and could not believe what they were looking at. This is the city that invented civilization, and in 570 BC, it knows it. The first thing any visitor to Babylon encounters is the walls, and the walls are a statement. Babylon is protected by a double fortification system that has no equal in the ancient world. The outer wall of Babylon was called by the ceremonial Akkadian name Nemed Enlil, which means bulwark of the god Enlil. The outer wall, called Imgur Enlil, is roughly 25 feet thick. Behind it, separated by a gap filled with rubble, stands the inner wall, Nemidi Enlil, at 23 feet thick. Together, they form a defensive barrier nearly 50 feet wide. Watchtowers rise at 65-foot intervals along the entire circuit. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing about a century after our visit, will claim these walls are 300 feet high and wide enough for a 4-horse chariot to turn on top of them. He is exaggerating. Herodotus usually does, but the truth is still extraordinary. The walls stretch for over 11 miles, enclosing an area of roughly 900 hectares. Inside these walls, and spilling beyond them into outer suburbs, live an estimated 200,000 to 500,000 people. This is, by any reasonable measure, the largest city in the world. Babylon has 8 major gates, each one named after a god. The most magnificent, the Ishtar Gate on the north, is dedicated to the goddess of love and war. But every gate serves as both an entrance and a checkpoint. Trade goods are inspected, tariffs are collected, foreigners are watched. A moat filled with water from the Euphrates surrounds the entire circuit. Metal grates are installed underwater where the river enters and exits the city, allowing the water to flow through while preventing anyone from swimming in. The engineers who designed this system understood that a city is only as secure as its weakest point. They left none. The man who built all of this, who tore down the old walls and replaced them with these monstrosities of brick and bitumen, did not do it out of fear. He did it because he could. He wanted every person who approached Babylon to understand, before they even entered, exactly what kind of power lived here. His name was Nebuchadnezzar II. His presence is everywhere. Every brick in this city carries his name. In 570 BC, Nebuchadnezzar II has been dead for approximately 8 years. His son, Amel-Marduk, succeeded him briefly before being assassinated. The throne now belongs to Neriglissar, a former general who married one of Nebuchadnezzar's daughters. But make no mistake, this is still Nebuchadnezzar's city. Every monument, every street, every wall you see was either built or rebuilt by him during his 43-year reign. Nebuchadnezzar was not born to the throne. His father, Nabopolassar, was a Chaldean military commander who seized power during the collapse of the Assyrian Empire. When the Assyrian capital Nineveh fell in 612 BC, the ancient world's most feared superpower disappeared in a single generation. Babylon filled the vacuum. As crown prince, Nebuchadnezzar proved himself a brilliant general. In 605 BC, at the Battle of Carchemish, he shattered the Egyptian army so completely that Egypt never again seriously threatened Mesopotamia. He then spent the next 2 decades systematically conquering everything between the Euphrates and the Mediterranean. His most notorious act, at least to later history, was the destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BC. He besieged the city, burned Solomon's temple to the ground, and deported the Jewish elite to Babylon, the event that became known as the Babylonian captivity. For the people who wrote the Bible, this was the defining catastrophe of their civilization. For Nebuchadnezzar, it was a Tuesday. Jerusalem was one of dozens of rebellious vassal states he crushed. He did the same to Tyre, though that siege took 13 years. But Nebuchadnezzar's real obsession was not war, it was building. He poured the wealth of conquest into Babylon itself, renovating 13 cities, but lavishing the most attention on his capital. The Ishtar Gate, the Processional Way, the Etemenanke Ziggurat, the Southern Palace, the Northern Palace, the walls, the canals, the temples. Every major structure you see in Babylon today bears his inscription. He stamped his name on the individual bricks, literally, thousands of them, so that anyone, centuries from now, who digs up a single brick from this city will know who built it. His ego was the size of the empire, but so was his talent. The city he left behind is genuinely the most impressive thing human beings have yet constructed. To enter Babylon properly, you walk the processional way. This is not just a road. It is the most spectacular piece of urban design in the ancient world. A ceremonial avenue roughly half a mile long, running due north from the Ishtar Gate to the sacred precinct at the city's heart. The road surface is made of large limestone slabs fitted together with precision. Underneath those slabs, the foundation is baked brick set in bitumen. This road was built to last forever. It very nearly has. The walls on either side of the processional way are covered in glazed bricks of deep lapis lazuli blue. Set into these blue walls in raised relief are 60 golden lions, the sacred animal of Ishtar. Each lion is roughly 2 meters long, made of molded brick covered in golden yellow glaze. They stride in a continuous procession along both walls, heading south toward the temple. The effect, walking between them, is of being escorted, or guarded, by an army of divine predators. The Ishtar Gate itself is even more extraordinary. It is a massive double gate, an outer gate and an inner gate connected by a passageway. The entire structure is covered in the same brilliant blue glazed bricks, but here the animal decorations change. Instead of lions, the gate displays alternating rows of 2 creatures, bulls, sacred to the weather god Adad, and Mushusu, the dragon of Marduk. The Mushusu is unlike anything in your imagination. A scaly body, a serpent's neck, a horned viper's head, the front legs of a lion, the hind legs of an eagle, and a scorpion's tail. It is the symbol of Babylon's patron god, and it looks exactly as terrifying as it is supposed to. These animals are not painted. They are sculpted in 3-dimensional relief from individual molded bricks, each one fired and glazed separately, then assembled into the wall like a colossal mosaic. The technology required to produce consistent blue glaze at this scale, across hundreds of bricks that must fit together perfectly, is staggering. No other civilization on Earth can do this in 570 BC. Once a year, during the Akitu, the New Year festival, the entire processional way becomes the stage for the most important religious ceremony in Babylon. The statue of Marduk is carried from the Great Temple through the Ishtar Gate and along this road in a massive public procession. The king himself walks beside the statue. The entire city watches. For this one day, the processional way is not just beautiful, it is the axis of the universe. Even on an ordinary day, walking this road does something to you. The blue walls, the golden lions, the sheer height of the gate ahead, it is designed to make you feel small. It works. At the center of Babylon, visible from every point in the city and from miles across the surrounding plain, stands the structure that will become the most famous building in human mythology. The Babylonians call it Etemenanki, the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth. It is a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid made entirely of brick, and it is enormous. Modern archaeologists estimate its base at roughly 90 meters on each side, nearly as wide as the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its height, though debated, may have reached 90 meters or more. 7 tiers of successively smaller platforms stacked on top of each other, connected by monumental staircases, with a temple to Marduk at the summit covered in blue glazed bricks that catch the sunlight and are visible for 20 miles. You know this building by another name, the Tower of Babel. The story in Genesis, of a tower built to reach heaven, and of God scattering the builders and confusing their languages, is almost certainly inspired by this exact structure. The Jewish exiles brought to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar would have seen the Etemenanki rising above the city. For a displaced people whose own temple had just been destroyed, this alien monument must have seemed like an act of supreme arrogance. The story they told about it reflects that. But for the Babylonians, the Etemenanki is not arrogance, it is devotion. This ziggurat is the staircase between the human world and the divine. Marduk, the king of the gods, the deity who created the world by splitting the body of the primordial sea monster Tiamat, lives at the top. The priests who ascend those stairs each day are walking into the presence of the god who maintains the order of the universe. At the base of the ziggurat sits the Esagila, the great temple of Marduk. This is the richest religious building on earth. According to ancient texts, it contained a golden statue of Marduk and a golden table that together weighed over 23 tons of solid gold. Even if the figures are exaggerated, the real treasury was staggering. The Esagila was Babylon's Vatican, its spiritual center, and its greatest repository of wealth. Nebuchadnezzar did not build the Etemenanki from scratch. Ziggurats had stood on this site for centuries, but he tore down the old one and rebuilt it grander than anyone before him. He wrote about it himself in his own inscriptions. I raised its top to rival the heavens. 8 years after his death, no one has dared change a single brick. The Euphrates River does not pass by Babylon. It passes through it. The city is built on both banks of the river, with the older, grander western half home to the palaces and temples, connected to the eastern residential districts by a remarkable stone bridge. This bridge, resting on boat-shaped piers of baked brick set in bitumen, may be the first permanent river crossing of its kind in the ancient world. The deck is made of wooden planks that can be removed at night for security. During the day, it carries a constant stream of foot traffic, donkey carts, and trade goods between the two halves of the city. But the river is much more than a dividing line. It is the reason Babylon exists at all. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, is a flat, hot, nearly rainless plain. Without the Euphrates and Tigris, it would be desert. What makes it the most productive agricultural land in the ancient world is an irrigation system so vast and so ancient that nobody alive remembers when it was first built. Canals branch off the Euphrates in every direction, carrying water to fields that produce barley, wheat, dates, and sesame. The surplus from these fields feeds the city. It also feeds the empire. Inside Babylon itself, a network of smaller canals serves as both a water supply and a transportation system. Goods move through the city on flat-bottomed boats. Date palms line the canal banks, providing shade and fruit. The canal water is used for bathing, cooking, and brewing, though anyone sensible boils it first. The canals also serve as sewers, which is why the sensible people boil the water. The engineering required to maintain this system is extraordinary. Canals silt up, floods destroy levees. The river itself shifts course over decades. Babylon employs thousands of workers whose only job is to dredge canals, repair embankments, and manage the flow of water. This is not glamorous work, and no one writes poems about it. But if the canals fail, the fields dry up. If the fields dry up, the city starves. Everything you see in Babylon, the walls, the temples, the gate, the army, ultimately depends on a network of muddy ditches maintained by men with shovels. The Babylonians understand this. Maintaining the canals is considered a sacred duty. Kings boast about it in their inscriptions, right alongside their military victories. In Babylon, water management is not infrastructure. It is statecraft. The southern palace of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's primary residence, sits just inside the Ishtar Gate on the western bank of the Euphrates. It is not a single building, but a vast complex of 5 interconnected courtyards, each one larger and more restricted than the last, leading inward toward the throne room at the heart of the complex. The throne room itself is the most lavishly decorated space in Mesopotamia. Its facade is covered in the same brilliant blue glazed bricks as the Ishtar Gate, arranged in patterns of stylized trees and flowers with golden columns and borders. This is where foreign ambassadors are received. This is where conquered kings are paraded. The visual message is unambiguous. You are standing in the most powerful room on earth. Somewhere in this palace complex, or possibly in the northern palace further upstream, there may exist the most famous structure in the history of architecture. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, listed by later Greek writers as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The problem is that no one is entirely sure they exist. No Babylonian text ever mentions them. No cuneiform inscription by Nebuchadnezzar, and the man inscribed everything, references a garden. The descriptions we have come entirely from Greek and Roman writers, some of them writing centuries after Babylon's fall. The traditional story is romantic. Nebuchadnezzar built the gardens for his wife Amytis, a Median princess who missed the green, mountainous landscape of her homeland. To cure her homesickness, he constructed an artificial mountain of tiered terraces, irrigated by a mechanical system that lifted water from the Euphrates to the upper levels, and planted it with every species of tree and flowering plant he could import. A mountain of green in the middle of a flat brown desert. Some modern scholars believe the Hanging Gardens actually existed not in Babylon, but in the Assyrian city of Nineveh, and that later writers confused the two. Others argue that the archaeological evidence simply has not survived, that mud brick terraces in a wet climate would have dissolved over centuries. What we know for certain is this: Nebuchadnezzar did build extraordinary palace gardens. His inscriptions describe elaborate plantings. Whether they rose in terraces high enough to be called a wonder of the world, or whether the story grew in the retelling, is a question that archaeology has not yet answered. Either way, the legend says something true about Babylon. This was a city that believed it could reshape nature itself. Babylon in 570 BC is one of the most cosmopolitan places on Earth. The population is a mixture of native Babylonians, Chaldeans, Arameans, Jews brought in from the deportation of Judah, and smaller communities of Egyptians, Persians, Elamites, and others drawn by trade or dragged here by conquest. They speak multiple languages, though Akkadian written in cuneiform script remains the language of official business, and Aramaic is rapidly becoming the spoken language of the streets. Society is divided into 3 broad classes. At the top, the Awilu, the free citizens, landowners, merchants, and officials who control most of the wealth. In the middle, the Mushkenu, a class that is difficult to translate, perhaps dependents or commoners, people who work royal or temple land without owning it. At the bottom, the Wardu, slaves. But slavery in Babylon is not what you might expect. Many slaves are debt slaves, people who sold themselves or were sold by their families to pay off debts. Their slavery is often temporary. They can own property, conduct business, and eventually buy their freedom. War captives have it worse. The daily life of an ordinary Babylonian revolves around a few constants: bread, beer, and the river. Beer is everywhere. It is not a luxury. It is a staple food. Babylonian beer is thick, cloudy, rich in protein and calories, brewed from barley bread that is crumbled into water and left to ferment. It is drunk through long reed straws to filter out the sediment. There are dozens of varieties. Workers are paid in beer. Temples distribute beer. The law regulates its price and punishes tavern keepers, who are almost always women, for overcharging or allowing treasonable conversations in their establishments. The penalty for a tavern keeper who harbors conspirators is death. The markets of Babylon are vast and noisy. Merchants sell everything from Tyrian purple dye to Indian spices to Egyptian linen. Prices are set by supply and demand, but the government intervenes when it needs to. Weights and measures are standardized. Contracts are written on clay tablets in cuneiform, signed by witnesses, and stored in archives. Babylonians are fanatical record keepers. We know this because their records survived. The clay tablets did not rot, did not burn, did not decay. Tens of thousands of them have been excavated. They contain everything from royal decrees to school exercises to one of the most famous documents in history, a complaint letter from a merchant named Nani to a trader named Ea Nasir about the delivery of substandard copper. "You have treated me with contempt," Nani writes. The letter is nearly 4,000 years old. The anger is eternal. Babylon has been writing laws longer than most civilizations have existed. The Code of Hammurabi, 282 laws carved into a black stone stele and erected in a public place for all to read, was already over 1,000 years old by 570 BC. Hammurabi ruled Babylon around 1792 BC. His code was not the first written law, but it was the most comprehensive, and its principles continue to shape Babylonian legal thinking 12 centuries later. The famous principle, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, is real, but it is only part of the story. The code also regulates wages, sets prices for medical procedures, establishes liability for builders whose structures collapse, governs inheritance and divorce, and protects the property rights of women. A Babylonian woman can own property, run a business, file for divorce, and testify in court. She is not equal to a man. The law explicitly values her life and injuries at lower rates, but she has legal standing that women in many later civilizations will not enjoy for thousands of years. In 570 BC, Babylon's courts operate on a system of written evidence and witness testimony. Contracts are sealed, disputes are adjudicated by panels of judges, and verdicts are recorded on clay tablets. The legal archive of Babylon is vast. It includes property transfers, loan agreements, marriage contracts, adoption records, and criminal sentences. If you do business in Babylon, you do it in writing, and you keep a copy. The law is not gentle. Penalties range from fines to mutilation to death. A builder whose house collapses and kills the owner is executed. A surgeon whose patient dies may lose his hand. A false accuser is given the punishment he sought for the accused. The system is harsh, but it is a system, consistent, written, public, and applicable to everyone, at least in theory. In a world where most disputes are settled by the sword of whoever is stronger, Babylon offers something remarkable: the idea that even the powerful must answer to a written rule. Every night, on the upper platforms of the Etemenanki and on the rooftops of the temples, the priests of Babylon watch the sky. They are not stargazing, they are reading the future. Babylonian astronomy is the most advanced on Earth. The priests have been recording the movements of the stars, the moon, and the 5 visible planets for centuries. Meticulous observations written on clay tablets and stored in temple archives going back generations. They can predict lunar eclipses. They have mapped the constellations. They have divided the sky into 12 sections that we still use today. The zodiac is a Babylonian invention. So is the 60-minute hour and the 360-degree circle. The Babylonian number system is based on 60, a choice so mathematically elegant that it has outlasted every empire that has ever existed. Every time you check your watch, you are using Babylonian mathematics. The religion of Babylon is inseparable from this science. The gods are not distant abstractions. They live in the temples, in the form of statues that are fed, clothed, and cared for daily by the priests. Marduk, the king of the gods, resides in the Asagila. Ishtar, goddess of love and war, has her own temple and her own rituals. Nabu, god of writing, is worshipped by every scribe. Sin, the moon god, governs the calendar. The priests are not just religious figures. They are the intellectuals of Babylon, the astronomers, the mathematicians, the record keepers, the physicians. The temple is the university. The ziggurat is the observatory. The boundary between science and religion does not exist here because Babylonians see no distinction. Understanding the movements of the stars is understanding the will of the gods. Knowledge and worship are the same act. In later centuries, the Greeks will call these priests Chaldeans, and the word will become synonymous with astrology and ancient wisdom. Greek philosophers will travel to Babylon specifically to learn from them. Much of what Europe will later call Greek science began on these rooftops, written in wedge-shaped marks on clay. In 570 BC, Babylon feels permanent. It feels like the center of the world because it is. The walls are unbreachable. The temples are full. The canals flow. The empire stretches from the Persian Gulf to the borders of Egypt. There is no reason to believe that any of this will change. It will change very quickly. Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BC has already begun the unraveling. His son Amel-Marduk lasted 2 years before being murdered. Neriglissar, the current king, will reign for only 4 years. His son will be assassinated after 2 months. The throne will then pass to Nabonidus, a strange, deeply unpopular king who will alienate the powerful priests of Marduk by favoring the moon god Sin instead. Nabonidus will abandon Babylon for 10 years to live in an Arabian oasis, leaving his son Belshazzar in charge of a resentful city. And then, in 539 BC, just 31 years from now, Cyrus the Great of Persia will march his army to the gates of Babylon. According to later accounts, the Persians diverted the Euphrates River upstream, lowering the water level beneath the city walls, and waded in while the Babylonians were celebrating a religious festival. The greatest fortification system in the ancient world was bypassed by the river it was built to contain. Babylon did not burn. Cyrus was smarter than that. He entered the city as a liberator, not a destroyer. He freed the Jewish exiles. He restored the priests of Marduk. He kept Babylon as a jewel of his empire. Alexander the Great, 2 centuries later, would conquer it too, and die there, in Nebuchadnezzar's own palace, planning to make it his capital. The city endured for centuries after its political power ended. It declined slowly, brick by brick, as the canals silted up and the population drifted away. Today, what remains is a mound of earth in central Iraq, 55 miles south of Baghdad. The blue bricks of the Ishtar Gate are in a museum in Berlin. The clay tablets are scattered across the world's collections. But every time you divide an hour into 60 minutes, or a circle into 360 degrees, or look up at the stars and name the constellations, you are speaking Babylonian. They built a city that was the wonder of the ancient world,